All right, Eric. This is something very special we have today with Brian Cunningham in the house. So I just got this off of his LinkedIn profile. I've been reading his book called The Leadership Revolution because evolution takes too long. So, Brian is an explorer of the deeper possibilities of leadership, and he has become crystal clear about the joy and value of stepping into the best version of himself in service to others. And Brian is more than helpful in assisting others become better leaders. I've read half of his book and has turned my world upside down in my view of leadership. And I see his posts on LinkedIn, and you were in for a blast because he definitely is a revolutionary when it comes to leadership. So, Brian, welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, Harry, Eric, I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be hanging out with you two on a Sunday. Thank you so much.
It's
It's
a great
awesome.
day. Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks
we're
for
Yeah.
we're
thanks for
we're
coming on.
thrilled.
First
Brian,
person,
tell.
by the way, first
Oh,
person from Hawaii,
oh yeah,
the
that's
There you
right.
go.
paradise, the
Yeah,
paradise secret of the world.
Big aloha to you all.
Big
thank you.
aloha right back.
Yeah, Brian definitely lives the aloha culture. He was telling us earlier about the traffic and that people in Hawaii let each other merge into traffic, and that cracked me up. Definitely don't see that in South Florida. So, Brian, tell us, your book is fascinating. Why, after all of the books out there on leadership, did you feel a need that there needed to be a leadership revolution, and what prompted you to write a book about it? I know
uh,
that's an
pre-
easy question.
yeah, appreciate the question, Harry. Well, there's so many great books out there. You've read them, I've read them, they're still coming out. I have learned so much from so many other leaders and their perspectives. But as we move further and further into complexity, what I found was the things I was reading, when I would attempt to implement them, they were only partially successful. They became limited as the complexity increases. Some books are very straightforward, do this, do that. And in a less complex environment, everything works out fine. But that's not your world. That's not my world. That's not most of the people out there, the worlds they're dealing with. So, what the conclusion I came to through the practice of implementing what I was reading was that there was still something missing. There was there was not the material I was looking for that fully integrated all of the different perspectives about leadership. The leadership books I was reading were sharing really valuable tools or skill sets or discussions of various types of mindset, but they were not integrated into a progression that we could grow along. And, as an example, you might read a great book on servant leadership. And we've probably all read articles and books about servant leadership. Well, the question that came to my mind was, why isn't everybody performing as a servant leader then? I would talk to people, they say, yeah, I read that book. Yeah, I read that article. And then why are we still operating in that authoritarian realm? So, you start to just observe reality. Obviously, it takes more than the reading of a book or the sharing of information. I started to look at that and stare at that and wonder about why, there was all these sort of disparate approaches to leadership, all these tools and strategies and tactics, but there wasn't a place where they all came together in a developmental progression that.
Harry, that's Brian
Yeah,
froze, right?
yeah.
All right, I'm going to pause the recording.
So this developmental progression became sort of the guiding focus for my deeper explorations in leadership. As I said, you see them in sports, you see them in the military, you see them everywhere. If you've ever coached or worked with kids or at any level, even athletes that really understand a sport, you still need to bring them in, coach them up into higher levels of expression of their skills, and tweak little things about how they're doing, what they're doing, how they're doing it. Right. So this is an inherent process in any growth process. Every dynamic living system on the planet grows along a natural developmental progression. So as we look out at reality, this is what we see. So every dynamic living system grows along a developmental progression, except leadership. As I stared at leadership, I did not see this. I saw tools and tactics and strategies and mindsets and all this stuff. So then, we take maybe a high level approach to leadership like servant leadership, and we put it out there and say, hey, here it is. This is what it looks like and feels like and smells like. Just do that. And so it's no wonder that leaders who are currently grounded at lower levels of leadership cannot just jump right into this high level of expression of leadership. You can't become, Michael Jordan on day one. That is a long developmental progression, right? You don't go from kindergarten to PhD work. We need to, crawl before we walk and walk before we run. Everything expresses itself along a developmental progression except leadership. There does not appear to be that awareness in the field of leadership. So because of that lack of an understanding of the developmental progression, the strategies, tools, and tactics are not integrated within a developmental progression. In a developmental progression, if you took a higher skill and you wanted to share it with somebody, you'd make sure that you built the foundational building blocks for it. But that does not really exist readily in the leadership realm. So that's what I was seeing, a lack of integration, a lack of a clear pathway forward, a lack of the full possibilities of leadership, and most importantly, how to pull people along and open them up to the experiences they need to understand their potential as a leader. Not just lecture people about leadership, do this, do that, be this, be that. How to move a team, an individual forward in complexity in the real world. So it was all that caused me to do that deeper level of exploration and to start to sort of document the process and document these levels of leadership that began to emerge to me through this exploration, and to document all this and sort of create a model for it and a framework so that it could be replicated and it could be shared with the leaders that I was working with, and then ultimately shared as part of the larger conversation of leadership through the book.
Wow, that's great. And Brian, a couple of things. One is, how do you define leadership?
Thanks for that question, Eric. I love all the definitions of leadership that are out there by, Peter Drucker and, this one, that one. They all have, I think, deep meaning and application. But, as I stared at it, as I sat with it, and as I sort of observed leadership in its function, what continued to come to me was there was something deeper, something more foundational. And what I eventually arrived at is that leadership is fundamentally an expression of love in action. And, if we could operationally define that a bit, love is simply our recognition of our true connection as human beings, and out of which comes the desire to serve and support each other through an effort in real time, and moving ourselves forward in a challenge, moving ourselves forward in our thought patterns, in our, maybe limited thinking. So to me, leadership is an expression of love in action.
I saw a meme one time and it said, and I never forget it. It said, it's wonderful when people love their leaders. It's even more wonderful when the leader loves their people. And that stood out.
That's a beautiful quote. And we would flip that around and just say, it's an imperative. I've heard Harry say it. I've heard you say it. Leadership is a partnership with people. We're in the people business. Sales, leadership, we're in the people business. And so first and foremost, we must love our team, those that we serve. It flows from there. If then our people, our team, the people we're selling to recognize that and reciprocate on some level, that's great too. But first and foremost, we must get it. must get into the place in our expanded awareness when it is a natural outflow of who we are and why we're here. We are not loving
Absolutely.
others, like we just are love in action.
Absolutely. So for the listeners who have no idea who Brian Cunningham is, can you share with us a little bit about why do you even feel like you have the experience or the knowledge to write a book on leadership, and where did you start, and where did you kind of grow into the leadership that you express today?
Thanks, Eric. You know, like you all, when I listen to your stories, I sort of grew up in the same way, extremely confused about life, and failing and failing and failing forward. So much of this is built on that foundation of early failure. But like both of you, I also had this sort of thought in my mind, that this nagging feeling that something wasn't right here. I wasn't seeing things clear enough. And that's what sort of spurred me on to always be looking a little deeper into things. What is really going on? That was my question. I can see it, I can feel, but what's beneath that? What's behind it? And, early on in life, I got my first big job. It was actually in a large hospital in Philadelphia. And my first job there was as a parking lot attendant. And, I love that job. I can still park really well to this day. So, but I could see something was different about that environment. Something was different about the people that were involved. And it sort of caught my curiosity. I was able to move into, other roles, and elevator operator and transport aide, transportologist, we called ourselves, wheeling patients around this big hospital, and got into the clinical environment. And, I was a nuclear med tech and occupational therapist for many years. And then always pulled forward with the desire to serve more people. That was the foundation of it. I didn't know anything really about leadership, in a formal way. I knew that I just wanted to serve more people. And that's what pulled me in to sort of leadership roles. And, of course, that opened me up, going back to school again and understanding larger principles of business and understanding how they are really about people also. So the whole pathway that I was stumbling through early on was leading towards opportunities to serve more people. And of course, as I got more clear about that in life, I really sort of dove in and dug in and read and studied and practiced and observed and experimented and questioned. And that sort of led me to this experiential pathway towards, leading larger groups of people, and eventually, was fortunate to move into a CEO role where my responsibility is to serve everyone.
You're so humble about it, but I mean, the story of parking lot attendant to CEO of a hospital is just, I don't know, that stuff pumps me up. So like, hey, if you're listening to our podcast right now while you're parking a car, one, kudos to you, because you are smart and on your way somewhere.
You're a rock
but
star.
two, you could be a CEO in a few years of that same hospital where you're parking.
35 years or so,
Just a few.
I love it. Yeah.
It takes a little time, but that's just time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll happen. What were you reading? Like what books really had an impact on you on leadership as you were growing?
Oh my gosh, Eric, big question. Everything I could get my hands on about, spirituality, personal growth, indigenous cultures and their cosmologies. That was my early readings. And I read, I can't even tell you how many books, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, articles, papers, magazine articles, everything about in the personal growth world, spirituality, and then later got into sort of formal leadership readings. Come to find out that they are very much connected. The more expanded views of leadership are very much in alignment with what we would read in spirituality or personal growth, right? It's all connected. There's no separation. So hundreds and many hundreds of books and workshops. I was just ravenous with attempting to learn and grow and experience, the deeper parts of ourselves.
Wayne Dyer was in Hawaii, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was on Maui. You know,
Okay.
he died before we moved out here. But I've read all, of course, Wayne Dyer's books.
Got it.
Wayne
Yeah, I
Dyer,
can hear that.
Joseph Campbell back in the day. He was a big one for me, the hero's journey,
Yep.
which is one of the themes that you see reflected in the book, Harry.
Mm-hmm.
So just everybody, Deepak Chopra, Don Miguel Ruiz, David Dibble, you know, just Albert Einstein, everyone, anything I get my hands on.
Harry, so Paul Martinelli, we had on the show, actually shared the stage with Wayne Dyer, just
Oh
to
my
kind of
gosh.
connect the dots here. And
Yeah.
so and I'm a huge fan of Wayne Dyer. And
This is, yeah. I mean, the
Paul,
great thing
I
about,
listened,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Harry. I
You go.
listened to the podcast that you all had with Paul Martinelli. That was amazing.
Thank you.
That was really amazing.
He's great.
Sorry, Harry.
So the beauty of the podcast is that we're humble servants and we just keep learning from our guests. The thing that strikes me in our conversation, you keep using the word love.
Yes.
And then, my familiarity with leadership, a lot of it has been authoritarian.
Yes.
Right. And so, you think of like the classic example for me is George Patton, right?
Mhm.
Where he was a guy that wanted to lead and led and probably didn't have, he had love of country. I'm not going to judge, but it was just different, right? That type of really strong leader. And a lot of people look up to that. And then you come along and you and many others talk about self-sacrifice, love, humility, and leadership. When you first started in your role when you recognized that you, Brian Cunningham, were a leader, did you struggle with that at all? Did you look back at the authoritarian types and then say, that's not really what I want to be like, but I have to fall into that? Or can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, as I first got into leadership in a formal role, I was extremely confused. So I did what most other leaders did, and I looked out at the leaders that surrounded me and the leaders I reported to. And Harry, guess what I saw? Just example after example of dysfunctional leadership and authoritarian approaches and real confusion about what was going on. I would ask, lots of questions in life. So I'd ask, well, what do you think about this? And how about this? And very clearly, I found out that most people did not know very much about leadership. Oh, just do this,
Mm-hmm.
just tell them to do this, or just write them up. I'm like, huh? So, that wasn't sitting with me. Once again,
yeah,
something's not clear here. I don't know what it is, but I know that that's not it. So, it was those early experiences that caused me to question really what's going on. I looked for a mentor. I was looking, I was asking, I was hoping, nope. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what really drove me into, the books and reading more, because I could not find it in my physical reality. So it was reading the books, and not just reading them, but then practicing them, figuring out what was real, what worked, what was scalable, and what was actionable in the current environment. You bring up George Patton. He was in a specific environment, and that approach obviously worked very well to that degree. So, in that situational issue, that was sort of how it expressed itself.
You know what I love?
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. I had to interrupt because you said something, and if I don't rewind and kind of like put a magnifying glass on it, it could just zoom on by. But you said I couldn't find it in my physical reality.
Yes.
And that's what turned you to the books, to go find a different way. And there's so many leaders that just accept their physical reality. Well, this is just how it is. He told me to write him up. I got to go write him up.
Right.
Yeah.
They said to this, I'm just going to go do this. Yeah. But that's not what real leadership is. Real leadership is, if it doesn't feel, there's got to be some kind of intuition. It sounds like there was an intuition that said, nope, go find a different way. And you listen to it.
Yes, because, as we were talking about earlier, I had been doing my personal growth work for many years, all the way through this journey from parking lot attendant. And at that time I was a director, and so my personal growth work informed me that something's not right here. This isn't it. when I would bring things like this up, I remember many leaders would tell me, well, that's different. You don't know what you're talking about. It's different in the working world. That's just all fluffy, right?
Right.
And my sense was, no, there is no separation. There is not work life and home life. There is only life. And so the degree that we can integrate that is the degree that we can move with much more ease and grace. So I had done enough work to know that's not it. I don't know what it is, but that's not it. And that's what caused me to dive in and do the deeper work to try to move myself forward. And I did through the books, and I got a little better. But as my role expanded and I found myself in more complexity and dealing with, large teams and diverse backgrounds and educational backgrounds and different goals and agendas, that wasn't enough. Just doing this or deep listening or being this, not enough. It's not even close. You need to understand the whole thing, the whole context of leadership. So it was through the developmental progression that I could clearly see it, understand it, and do my work along that progression, and then be in a position to support others in their growth.
So I apologize. I have not read your book, but I promise I will. As a matter of fact, I'll order it right after this recording. But can you walk us through the steps that you talk about in the book?
Yeah, well, it's thick,
It's over 400 pages. But
So,
Eric,
I'll get
before
the
you
audio
respond,
book.
well, I mean, Brian, one of the things that just cracks me up in the book is that you can read it and see yourself in different phases of your own life.
yeah,
Right. So I'm reading the book and I'm saying, I'm glad I'm not like that. And I'm like, phew, I'm glad I'm not like that. And then I realized I am like that. I was like that. Oh,
yeah,
actually, earlier today, I was just like that.
yes.
Give
I
us an
mean,
example,
yeah,
Harry.
it's
Come
really
on.
great stuff.
Listeners,
So, yeah,
listeners are hearing you like, we
yeah.
can't
So,
relate. What were you not
yeah.
like?
So that's what I'm setting up the table here for Brian, is that just that idea of being authoritarian.
Yes.
We don't, we may move on from that, right? We say that's not how I want to be and it's my way or the highway, but you start respecting other people's opinions. So an example of that, Eric, might be, people are afraid in an environment to bring up a good idea because they are not the leader, and the leader has this it's my way mentality and doesn't listen to others. So all these potential good ideas just fall by the wayside because of fear, right? So in my particular case, I can look at that and say, I'll never want to be like that. But then periodically, someone will bring up an idea, and I'm like, this is not the time for ideas. I'm saying for myself, I know what I'm doing. Don't question me. That's all in my head, what I want to say. And so at those moments, and Brian can share with you about awareness, is that you become aware of what is going on around you, and you stop and you say, okay, I need to listen. But there are times in my life that I go back to phase one as much as I think I'm way beyond phase one. And I have the characteristics of phase one, which is I want to be the my way or highway guy.
Yeah, there are so many subtleties to that authoritarian command and control approach. And since we've all received so much programming over our lifetime with that command and control approach, the authoritarian approach, we may grow a little bit or even a lot, but there's subtleties in it. The way we cut people off, maybe, in mid-sentence, or even if we don't, in our mind. You bring up a great example. In our mind, Harry, the tape loop is still going. I don't have time for this. I don't want to listen to this. These are all forms of the authoritarian leadership approach. Now, we may have moved on and grounded ourselves in more expanded perspectives of leadership, but we have to constantly be on guard, because little triggers that will trigger that tape loop again, or complexity or frustration will pull us right back into that as our default mode. So the journey is not a straight line. It is a spiral dynamic where we're constantly revisiting and getting pulled back into as we move forward.
And there's never an end point either.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
Right?
no. There's always another step. And to your original question, Eric, if I could sort of summarize it, there's
Please.
a couple key concepts because it is thick, it is complex. And that's because leadership is complex. So many times people make the mistake of trying to oversimplify something that's really complex, or they make something really simple way more complex than it needs to. So, leadership is a complex dynamic between human beings, this relationship of leadership and followership. So to sort of create a framework around it so we can see the full progression, it takes a little time, it takes a little effort. It's not for the faint of heart. If you just want some tips and tricks and hacks or that kind of stuff, I don't know how to do tricks, but I understand how to do the real work of leadership. So there's a couple keys in the developmental progression, Eric. The first one is life, leadership, right? It all starts and ends with our awareness. Okay, that's the key principle. Our growth in life, our growth as a human being, our growth in leadership is our growth in awareness, in action. It's all about awareness. If we're not aware of what's going on, or to the degree that we are aware, will dictate our access to the choices that exist in a complex situation. We all know this. If our awareness is more contracted through fear or resistance, we move into fight, flight, or freeze mode. I think maybe in the military, I was not in the military, Eric, thank you for your service, but much of the training is to move you beyond that fight, flight, or freeze mode so that you can operate in complexity, in danger, in these kinds of situations. So you're trained in that way along a developmental progression. So leadership, our growth in leadership is fundamentally a growth in awareness. That's why it's called the AQ model, the awareness quotient model. It's based fundamentally in our growth in awareness. And our growth in awareness expands along a natural developmental progression. So the keys to the model are that it is fundamentally about a growth in awareness. And when we apply that awareness to leadership, we will see and experience the developmental progression as it unfolds in our lives. Harry said it earlier. It's a mirror of our growth as a human being and a mirror of our growth as a leader. We can see this in ourselves. We experience it. So it's not really a theoretical model. Oh, I took this and took that. Many models take the latest research, smash it together, and have like a real slick little picture, circles or, whatever, squares and arrows. This is fundamentally a reflection of the reality of our growth in awareness as a human being and a leader. And when we do that work, this is what we see. We see authoritarian leadership. We see where it comes out of. We see that it comes out of that industrial age mentality, which was the common, predominant awareness around leadership at that time. We see as we've expanded our awareness and we've evolved into the information age. We all know this. We're experiencing it right now. We have instant access to all the data, information, best practices that we could possibly have, right? And that puts us in a better position to solve problems in complexity, which is one of the leaders' foundational sort of responsibilities, right? Solve problems. So now we're better equipped. And it's not just based on our experience anymore, as it was as an authoritarian leader, right? My way or the highway, my experience. And I guard my experience. I don't share it with you two, because then you'll use it against me, right? That's how I keep my power. Now we're in the information age, and now we all have the same level of access. But information and data is not enough either, as complexity has continued to increase. We have moved from industrial age to information age to the knowledge age. And right, it's all happening right now. It's all overlapping each other. In the knowledge age, we developed the ability to make right use of data and information. Data and information are just pieces of paper. How do we modify it to meet our specific needs? If I'm a coach for a team, how do I take all of my understandings of coaching, football, whatever, and apply it to this team that we're facing, the environment we're coming into that has a different offense or defense or player mix, right? So as we expand our awareness, along with the expansion and evolution of society, we can step into a more expanded expression of leadership that is able to meet the needs of this expanding complexity. So when we understand the developmental progression and apply our awareness to it, we just see it for what it is. And then we can do the work that we need to develop the awareness and the skills and the mindset, all that other stuff. Now we can use all that other information that people are sharing with us, appropriately context for what is going on. So that's the key. And if we're not aware of the developmental progression, Eric and Harry, here's the problem. We get stuck in the information, or excuse me, in the industrial age mentality. We're stuck in authoritarian leadership because that's the predominant programming still to this day. So we're using an old sort of approach to a new set of complexity. And that's the gap. That's the mismatch. That's the problem. And as complexity continues, and as there are multiple levels of complexity happening simultaneously, we can actually move into higher and higher levels, from the knowledge age to the understanding age, and to the wisdom age, and the transcendental age, to the mystic age, the awakened age, the integrated age, the unified age, right? You know, the universe just emerges for us. It shows us itself when we put ourselves into, reach out to it, you know, in that way, and just sort of focus on this expansion of awareness. It's like, wow. It's like that, one of my favorite quotes from Rumi, you guys, right? That which you seek is seeking you. So when we open ourselves up to anything, leadership, sports, service, love, when we open ourselves up deeply, sit with it, stare at it, right? Contemplate it, play with it, these deeper insights will come. And so when we then put them into action, we learn and grow and are in a better position to serve others. Ultimately, that's it. This doesn't make us smarter, better. It positions us to be able to serve others at extremely high levels in extremely complex situations.
Wow. Where are you increasing your levels of awareness now?
It's all the time. You know, the practice is the practice. You know, the practice becomes life. So, you know, once you've done your foundational work in anything, right, a sport, once you have sort of achieved a level of competence, you can start to then play with mastery on some level. And I'm not using that sort of like an egocentric term, but you begin to move with whatever the area of impact you're looking at. You'll be able to move with more ease and grace and with more spontaneity, right? As new situations appear to you, you're able to move with them and understand them and move them forward. So, you know, my approach is, depending on what the issue is, if it's something that I'm not sort of schooled in, I go back in and do my research. I go right back to level 2 approach. I do a lot of research, try to understand it. I ask a bunch of questions. Once I get that basis of knowledge, I look deeper, I stare deeper, I soften my gaze, I look for the relationships between things. And I know from experience that the next right answer, the next most creative approach will emerge out of that unknown, out of that new territory. So it's part, you know, playing with what you know while being open to the universe, the people in front of you. Somebody's going to say something and you're going to go, oh, that's the missing piece of the puzzle. They're going to look at it. They're going to point at something. They're going to express something. So awareness at that level, once you got the basics down, is about, it's sort of like improv in comedy, Harry, right? This free form. It's yes and. Most of leadership is no but this, but that. But the improv approach, this high level of comedy, is about yes and moving into that, moving the scene forward. So in that sort of level of awareness, you're just moving the scene forward, moving forward with it. with confidence, hope sometimes that something is going to emerge out of the scene. It's going to be a clue for you to say the next thing, to do the next thing. So it can be a little bit uncomfortable at first, but it's exciting, right? You're just sometimes waiting for that next sort of clue to come forward, and then you seize it and go for it. So it's a really dynamic process at some point, Eric. But I want you to know, just like Harry, I will get pulled back. Things will happen, and I will go back and confront my level oneness, my authoritarian, my need or desire to control, or level two, my need to be right, right? So those things will crop up. The things, it's a dynamic process. We're no better than anyone else in that respect. And that's what I think creates us as better leaders. We're not up here and they're down there. We stand side by side with everyone we serve.
Yeah, no, that's so great. It sounds like you absolutely cannot have an ego to have that kind of mindset of, and as you were talking, I'm hearing Wayne Dyer, right? I'm hearing be open to everything and attached to nothing. Know that it's coming. Be, open your mind, open your awareness, and it will come. And the only way it won't come is if you stop seeking it.
Yes.
Right. So that's really interesting. So ego has absolutely no play in that, because that could potentially hinder a leader's ability to be open to new awarenesses.
Well, great sort of question. If we were to talk about ego and then sort of place our awareness over here at ego, we can see ego for what it really is. And of course, just like awareness or just like anything else, there are degrees or levels or densities of ego. So when ego is in full control of things, that's going to completely, limit your ability to expand into these further possibilities. So I would say that ego is along for the ride, the whole way, but its density is much less and much less. It's not driving us. It's not using us. We are using ego. So we can use it then appropriately to express ourselves or to take care of, the business of daily affairs. But it becomes less and less of a controlling element of our lives. We see it for what it is.
Wow, that's great. So what's a good way for a leader to be able to kind of transfer their vision for the organization and get people really behind that vision? Are there certain things that leaders should become aware of when they try to do that?
Great sort of question. Very practical question. Happens all the time in leadership. So what should we do? And you've read them, I've read them. There's a bunch of great books on that, right? And articles. First do this, then do that. Here's the 5-step process, right? Clarify the vision, share the vision, seek input, all that. However, what I would sort of throw into that question is really sort of the what, why, where, and how of all that. And so the answer to any question about leadership to me is, first, we need to get sort of centered, present to our purpose in leadership. Only when we are clear about that are we in a position to rightfully express any of the other approaches to, leadership, the content of leadership that we may need to clarify a vision and move it forward. So there's any number of steps. There's various models. You can pick any one, right? They're all going to sort of have the same elements. Create the vision, do your SWOT analysis or your external environment and internal environmental assessment, look at your gaps, do all that work. Cotter's work about pulling together a guiding coalition, and, all of that work is important. That's sort of the X, Y, and Z of it. Mm-hmm. Step one is get clear about our purpose, get clear about who we are and why we're here as leaders. And the further along the developmental progression we are, Eric, if me and you, or not you, me and some other leader use the same 5-step approach to creating a vision, it'll be a completely different experience to the people that were there. So it's not as much the approach. There's a ton of approaches out there. It's like the game plan of the team, right? The game plan is one piece. It's an important piece, but it's not the most important piece. It's what the human beings that are engaged in that process bring to the game plan. So our responsibility then as a leader is to, yes, we must understand processes and we must understand best practice, right? Level one about establishing a vision moving it forward. That's part of it. That's the basics. But it's really about what we bring to it. Our level of commitment, our level of not just, change management. We could talk about, level 3, coaching leadership, which is the balanced left and right hemispheres of the mind, allows us to see things from a systems perspective and to create really fundamental change, to motivate others to move them forward. But we cannot transform things with just the mind. At level 4, transformational leadership, right? We connect left and right hemispheres of the brain with our heart. This is when we connect with love for others. When we can connect our mind with our heart, we're in a position to reach out to the minds and hearts of others and connect their passion and their purpose to an effort. We can change things with our mind, but it takes our heart to transform them. Change makes things different, while transformation makes us different. So if we're talking about establishing a vision, I see it as a transformational opportunity. And I am going to ground myself there in that reality and see that in others and approach that 5-step process to creating vision and change, connected with my mind and my heart to serve others in the best way possible. And that stance, that foundation that I come from is what is going to lead the group forward and lead me to being able to perceive what's most needed in the moment-to-moment interactions with the team to move this forward in the most appropriate way within the 5-step process. So, apologies if I'm getting a little sort of sideways, but the 5-step processes are great. How we approach them and from what level, we can use a level 2 approach, a best practice from a level 7, 8, 9, 10 level of awareness as a leader. And that experience will be very different. And many times people won't even know what just happened there. It was the same 5-step process, but something different happened. They may not know, level 8, 7, whatever, and it doesn't matter. This leadership approach does not require people's understanding of the terminology. All it requires is a leader with the commitment to engage others in a more expanded possibility of our service to each other.
What does that look like? Can you give me an example of how a leader can connect the mind, heart, and engage others with the possibility?
Yeah. So a key part of the work is not just an understanding of awareness and developmental progression. The keys to it are the understanding of the energetic impediments or the attachments that hold us at each level, and an understanding of the simple up-leveling techniques that can expand someone's awareness in real time, Eric. And we can do a very practical example. And this is really how the model emerged to me. It was through practicing and watching what happened that I started to see these subtle keys. So in a meeting, any business meeting, right, there's players in the room. Some are there sort of listening and very engaged. Others are just sort of floating, in there. And others are actively trying to torpedo whatever the effort is, right? This happens all the time.
All the time.
They do not want to be controlled, therefore they will control the meeting. This is a level 1 approach, happens all the time. It frustrates people, it shuts people down, right, out of fear, and it stops the forward movement in organizations. It happens everywhere all the time, from politics to our organizations, in our families. So the approaches to that, people would come to me and say, you need to kick them out of the meeting, or you need to tell them to shut up, or, we need to out-dominate the person who's trying to dominate us. And so, we could fight this and keep fighting it. But once again, there's a better way. There's an easier way. As our awareness expands, we just look at it. We can see that this person is stuck in their need to control others, right? They're attached to, they're held in place. They're held in level one because they see the world through this lens of, if I don't control others, I will seem weak. I will not have power. So our approach as a leader then is not to lecture them. Hey, level one leader, let me show you this book. It has levels, it's got this, it's got that, and it's not a lecture, right? Lectures don't move people forward. What moves people forward is the experience of something. So in real time, we can pull somebody into the experience. So here we go, Eric, level one leader. Well, this isn't right. It's not going to work. We don't have enough time. Here's my interaction. First of all, I need to be present and centered in a more expanded level of awareness. Otherwise, I will be pulled in to that drama. That level of drama has a weight and a gravity to it. It will pull us in. And before we know it, we'll be tussling about. That's exactly what a level one leader wants. My approach would be, hey, I appreciate to acknowledge their perspective. I really appreciate your perspective. I really appreciate your passion around solving this. In order for us to do this, let's take a moment. Let's get a little bit more clear. Help me understand the problem a little bit more. Let's dive down. Let's do a problem exploration. Let's do a root cause analysis. You're just sort of telling me about a problem. Help me to understand that. And that singular act, Eric, will expand their perspective. Well, we don't have time for that. Actually, we do have time. Let's take a little time. Let's understand this. Help me. Let's do a little research. Educate me. That process automatically moves us into level two, the information age, where we're starting to look at things from multiple perspectives, data, information. Hey, can we do a little bit more research? You just told me this. Can you show that to me? Can you show me the research? Can you show me some data? And that interaction automatically expands and shifts the perspective in real time in the meeting. We don't need to put that on their leadership development plan and wait a year. Hey, you need to be a little bit more whatever in a meeting. We do it in real time out of deep love and respect for others. We help them to perform at a higher level. Now, next meeting comes, we share some data and information. They're not cured, right? They're still pounding on the table. We acknowledge that. We thank them for that. We move even further from there. Now let's take that data and information that you just got for us. Now let's look to modify that to a way that will work for us. We obviously can't take data and information or best practice and shoehorn it into our organization. It typically doesn't work. So it is simply through an understanding of the developmental progression and the things that hold us back. And we know what they are because we have experienced them. So in real time, we don't have to fight with people. We don't have to guilt them, Eric. We don't have to shame them. All we need to do is step in with them. Don't get out of the way. Get in the way. Step into the way of connecting with others, the way of helping them forward to express their best self. And then we can say, hey, leader, thank you for that. I appreciate how out of your passion to help us move forward, you took the time to help us understand the problem more broadly and helped us to modify it that'll meet our needs. Thank you for that. And we anchor that experience in them. And the next meeting, right, we start from scratch. We may have to do it all over again with this leader, over and over, until they get the hang of performing at more expanded levels of service. So
wow, that sounds like, so what I'm hearing you say is you can't really help them from your level of awareness. You have to go to where they are and start at the point of where they are and help guide them to where you want them to go.
We meet them where they are. From our expanded awareness, we don't get pulled down or closed down. We don't meet domination with domination. We meet domination from an expanded perspective. We know it, we understand it, and we gently tug at their better selves. We bring that out. It's right there. We all see it. We try to demonize each other everybody's playing this, not everybody, level ones and twos are attacking each other. This group wants to be in control. This group wants to be right. And the fight continues to this day. Our responsibility as leaders is to expand ourselves beyond that so that we can meet them where they are, as you said, and pull on the parts of their better selves so that they have the experience of serving at a higher level that we can then anchor them in. It doesn't fix or change. It's not meant to fix or change people or convince them or anything. We are here to help others perform at their highest levels in the moment, in real time, so that we can move things forward. We're not here to fix or change anybody. If people sort of catch a glimpse of this and sort of get on board with that, oh, that's a great thing. Now we can build a larger coalition of leaders and have an even further impact. But it's not necessary to have an impact in a situation in real time.
So when you say, I agree, I think we're not here to fix or change, but do you think it's our job to help others increase their levels of awareness?
You know, is it our job? At some level, we could perceive reality that we are all here to serve each other, you know? So from that perspective, it most certainly is. But here's where we got to be real careful, Eric. We got to watch our level 1 and 2, and those tendencies will sneak back in. You know, these little subtle elements of control will sneak back in. Or level 2, I have to be right all the time. So Eric, I'm explaining this to you so that you can understand, you know, my perspective. You got to really watch that degree of ownership that we take over others' level of awareness or performance. We don't own them. We are not here to control them. We are here to share with them and serve and support them. And if they do their work, if they, you know, take that level of responsibility, things are going to expand sort of on a wider perspective. But I'm not here to control anybody. I'm not here to be right. If somebody is adamant in their perspective of reality, I'm going to say, great, let me know how that works for you. And, you know, I don't know. It may work. You show me, tell me.
So there, you don't really have you don't have your own agenda per se when you get in the way of that one leader that you gave an example of in a meeting who's in a meeting being aggressive and torpedoing you.
I don't have an agenda, but I have a responsibility. If I'm in an organization, right, at a certain level of leadership, we're here to serve and protect others and help others move. You know, there's a lot going on in there. But once again, we're doing it from a perspective that doesn't require the domination of another human being to achieve that goal of serving and supporting and making people feel safe so that they can too express themselves, right? All that's happening too. But it's from the perspective of our deeper purpose, which is to serve others in this larger journey of life.
Hey, Brian, are you, I'm not sure if you got frozen up. Are you there? Yep,
yes,
you're
I
there.
am.
Okay, sorry. You just had that still look. I thought I lost you there for a second.
You know, when we get into a dialogue like that, it's you know, you sit with it. This is awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've been sitting here for a while. One of the things that I was thinking, listening to you, is that this requires work and effort.
Yeah.
And a lot of small business owners probably will be listening to this and they'll say, I just don't have the time for that. I've got so many other things on my plate. I really don't have the time to think about what kind of leader I am. I just need people to make stuff happen so I can pay the bills. So what kind of advice, not advice if you don't want to use that word, but what kind of thoughts do you have on that?
Yeah. I mean, if somebody's not into it, it's going to go where it goes. And their people will get what they get and everything, you know, goes in that way. So, you know, people have the freedom to do that. It's for the people that have this same feeling that we grew up with. There's something more. I'm here to contribute something more. It's these people that move things forward in the way that we're talking about and expand sort of our experience into this complexity that keeps coming at us. It's for those people who choose to move forward, because it does take work and it does take time. But Harry, not that much work and not that much time.
Right.
Because we are doing this anyway.
Yeah.
right? We are putting energy into our expression of authoritarian leadership. It takes no more energy to express a higher level of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it takes less energy. We become
Interesting.
more efficient in our grace and ease. So it's actually easier. It takes a little work up front to start to grasp some of the basic principles, but then it gets easier over time.
Mm-hmm.
So for those people, if you don't want to, I wish you the best in life. Good luck, right?
Yep.
When you're ready, Harry's here, Eric's here, I'm here to serve and support you.
Yeah. I mean,
Not sure they're listening in.
we had this great conversation with a CEO recently,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he had like 300 employees, if I'm not mistaken, Eric. And that person as well was super passionate about leadership, servant-minded, servant
Yeah,
leadership. Um, the fellow was an empath. I mean, you could see the
nice.
emotion on talk about wearing emotions on your sleeve. It was just, I mean, we had the chills just listening to the guy and the way his feelings were for his people.
Yes.
And, I couldn't help but think what kind of awesome culture that must have been to work with that guy, right? They were
Yes.
a growing company. He is successful with growing companies. And then you have these other companies, not, again, I'm not judging because,
Yeah.
everyone's got their own challenges in life. You've got your own obstacles, but, some people just don't want to give it any time. And,
No.
they deal with turnover, right? They deal
Yes.
with people that just, they're always looking for something better to say, I can't find good help. And then you have a guy like this and you're saying, my God, I bet you his people don't want to leave. Right? I
You
mean,
know,
that's just a huge difference. I mean,
that,
what's
that
your thought?
yeah, that's very interesting. Um, I would share this. This stuff is complex, and I'm talking about these interrelationships in a larger workplace, even in a smaller workplace. And given that we really do not have control over others, nor should that be our mission, the workplace is a very interesting thing. We have people with all types of backgrounds and maybe agendas and levels of growth and levels of expectation and challenges in life. Life is hard. It can be very hard for many people.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody brings all this to work. You can't separate that out. So I would say this, even if you are a quote, level 10 leader, unified leader, experiencing oneness and wholeness with all of your actions and interactions, at that level, that does not guarantee that you will have a successful company, doesn't guarantee that your team and people will automatically jump in and everybody's singing kumbaya. It does not guarantee any of that.
Mm-hmm.
This thing, life, sort of has a way of going where it's going. Everybody's here learning their stuff. And so depending on the grouping of people, if you happen to get really lucky and you got this small or large group of just magically committed people, oh my gosh, really, you can take this stuff far. But the norm out there is a sort of, right, very mixed group of people, very different perspectives. So an expression of high level leadership does not guarantee anything. I know many of the books, want to sort of allude to, if you do this, then everybody makes
Right.
$1 million and culture is great. It is not necessarily true. Reality would dictate otherwise. That's why a lot of these books, we interviewed the Fortune 500 or the this or that. Well, that's great. But there's millions of other businesses on the planet and groups and organizations that don't have that level of whatever, financial support or the right product at the right time. And they're just grinding through it. How do we help those? And so what expanded leadership helps us do is to serve with more ease and grace and in more of an informed way to create the best possible experience for those we serve. But it guarantees nothing. That experience could be into, the closure of a business. It could be anything. It could be people still fighting on a daily basis, fighting with their own drama, their own trauma,
Mm-hmm.
But how do we ease that to a degree in this long arc of our growth as a human? So That's the perspective I would share. It's possible this guy might have knocked the whole thing out, and the culture might be a very clear reflection of that. It's very possible. But it is not a guarantee. Your growth, Harry, your growth, Eric, does not guarantee the growth of anyone else. It sets the stage for it. It opens the door to it, but it doesn't guarantee that anyone else will step through it.
Nor does it guarantee results for us either. And I think, the person Harry's talking about, what he really took pride in, and I think you alluded to that, is the front end, his interviewing process, and really making sure that the team he put in place was able to accomplish the things that he saw for the company. And I think like 90% of his focus went on learning and becoming a better gatherer of the right people for his culture.
Beautiful. Wish him, his team, the very best. He's a light for what we're talking about. He's a reflection of it. That's great.
Well, he's selling that company now for like millions of dollars and becoming a consultant. So I think it worked out pretty well for him.
Yeah.
Brian, so your book, how is it on Amazon? Where can people get it?
Okay. Yeah, just look at Amazon. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, get it through there, and we can exchange some thoughts back and forth. But yep, it's available on Amazon.
Got it. What do you want to be known for, Brian?
I have no desire to be known, or I have no. Sometimes people say, what's your legacy? I can't.
I almost asked that.
I can't.
Intuition said, "Don't do it."
Well, it's the same question.
Yeah.
It's the same
Dang
question,
it.
and I can't
trick you.
I understand it, and I understand where people are approaching with it, but I can't. It doesn't compute for me. I'm not here for a legacy, right? I'm here to serve. I think I used to have thoughts like that. I don't have them anymore. I don't see myself in that way. I am simply, this might sound corny. I am simply here to learn, grow, serve, love, and that's it. And that's it. That's just it. I don't know what the impact will be. I don't have a sort of a thought or a concern or a wonder about that. Oh, I wonder if people will like me back, or I wonder if they'll, it just doesn't arise for me any longer. So I'm just
focus
here to
on the
contribute.
process. How do you know if your day was successful? Like, how do you measure whether you've served that day or that month, or like what happens during your reflection time?
Yeah. With awareness, we know in the moment. We can also reflect back on it. But our life is happening in real time. We know what we're doing in real time. We know if we're serving or not serving, right? Here, Harry, let me help you. I know what's going on in my mind. If I'm thinking, oh man, this Harry, he's such a pain, I know I'm not serving in real time, right? So it is the real-time experience. So I know in real time if I'm serving or not serving. And if I were to go back and look back at the day, I could count. I served, then I didn't serve, then I served, then I, I could do that scorekeeping. But as awareness expands, our life happens in real time. And so it's the experience. How do I know that I'm experiencing and in alignment with the service I'm committed to? I know, right? You just know. And that's an important point, Eric. At some point, we can expand our awareness to the point that we do not need external validation or the research. The research tells us that if you're nice to people in the workplace, they will perform better. What were we able to do before that research came out? Sometimes, I love research. It's important. But we've defaulted our responsibility to directly perceive reality and defaulted it to I got to wait for the latest research to come out to know if what I was doing was service. Even if we interview 10 people, did Brian serve you today, Eric? You know what the data looks like. It's a bell-shaped curve. It's the normal distribution. 3 people said they felt served. The 5 in the middle weren't sure. The 2 on the other end think, I'm a dummy and I didn't do anything today. That's the normal distribution, right? So even that external validation can be a little tricky. Let's do a 360 survey, right? There's value in there. You can pluck out information, but the only way to really know is to really know. And that comes through the deeper exploration of who we are and why we're here. And in that place, we don't have to prove it. Even the two people who think I didn't serve them, I know if I did or not. I will know. If they perceived it or picked up on it or appreciate it, I don't know. But that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to convince them that I serve them like I used to try to do in my level 1, 2, 3 journey. That's dropped away. So we know when we know, just like you know things, Eric, and just like you know Harry, and just like every other person on the planet knows what they know.
Well, you served us today for sure, Brian. I got to share this story with you guys that happened yesterday. My wife had her car getting an oil change, and we walk out of the house to go get her car, and this little dog runs up, and there's no name tag, no collar, nothing. And so I put my dog's collar on her, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll just walk and, knock on every door and see if anybody knows this dog. And we started walking around. My wife found the house, and we returned the dog. And then later she went out, got some food for the kids. And she said later that day, she told me, she's like, it was such an amazing day today. I said, oh, yeah, what was amazing about the day today? She said, okay, so first we found the rightful owner for the dog, and that was phenomenal. And second, she said, I'm waiting in line to order food, and I see there's a big holdup. Something's happening, and nobody's really moving. And I noticed that it's a family with a couple of kids, and they forgot their wallet. Mm-hmm. And she said, I just paid for it. I went up. Nice. I said, let me pay for it. And the woman said, let me Venmo you the money. Let me, the husband was, and she said, no, let me just pay for it. And I didn't want anything back. I just wanted to pay for it. And, it doesn't matter what she spent on it, but she came home and she was just ecstatic. I haven't seen her that ecstatic about, or say that she had this awesome day like that before when she didn't serve somebody. So I don't know. It was, what you said really struck a chord with me, and it made sense.
She knew.
Yeah.
She knew. So we know. Right. We don't have to wait for the research. We don't have to wait for the 360.
That's awesome.
And we also know, as you pointed out earlier, Harry, we also know when we're not doing it, when we're faking it, when we're posing. We know.
For sure. Brian, this has been incredible. I cannot believe the amount of time that has gone through.
It was like 10 minutes.
I know. I mean, we could obviously go on. We have to get him back on here again, but this has been great. Thanks for all that you're doing in the world of leadership out there. You are making impact. I know that a few of us who are reading your book are posting things on LinkedIn, and I know it's changed my habits at work, my habits in my family. I can't thank you enough for that stuff. So keep up the good work, man.
That's why we're here. I can't thank you guys enough. I love what you're doing. I love listening to your podcast. You are real people doing the real work of leadership, and much love to both of you.
Thank you, Brian.
You're so awesome.
Aloha to you.
Aloha, Brian. You have a great rest of the day.
You all too.
Bye, Brian.